Epstein files release. And this morning, we're learning more about how the DOJ was tracking those types of memos before this document release. Let's bring in MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin and former federal prosecutor Barrett Berger. Lisa, you are all over this. What are you learning now?
Well, Anna, this morning I was looking to see whether the Department of Justice posted any new documents this morning regarding the alleged victim that we reported on yesterday. We thought maybe our reporting and that of NPR and an independent journalist named Roger Sullenberger might have changed what they were willing to post. I didn't find any new documents about the woman who accused both Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump of sexually assaulting her when she was 13 or 14 years old back in the 1980s. But what I did find absolutely stunned me, and that's a January 4th, 2026 memo from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. I just want to situate the date for you and our viewers. December 19th was the congressionally mandated date for compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And yet on January 4th, Deputy Attorney General Blanche is writing a 9-page memo to people at the department who were charged with doing the first level review of documents for production. And one of the things that the Deputy Attorney General instructs them to do in this memo is once they determine that something is responsive to one of the 9 categories that Congress mandates they need files for, he says there are some types of documents that we want you to particularly flag or tag while you're going through them in the electronic database. And one of them is something called a 302. Barrett knows this well as a former federal prosecutor, but a 302 is the form that the FBI uses to memorialize interviews. That's the exact kind of document that we reported yesterday was missing with respect to this particular accuser.
That is so interesting. And now we have a response from the DOJ as they are facing more and more questions about where these missing files are, why they're missing. And in a nutshell, their response is nothing to see here, saying anything that's been removed is for redactions to protect victims and would be promptly restored. And, quote, all responsive documents have been produced unless a document falls within one of the following categories: duplicates, privileged, or part of an ongoing federal investigation. So the question I have, Lisa, is do we know what category these specific documents would fall in, if that's the reason given for withholdings? And did they address specifically these documents we're asking questions about?
No, they did not. And in fact, I think the statement that you're referring to talks about documents that are deleted. Here, what we are discovering doesn't lead us to believe that any documents were suddenly published and then deleted. I want to be really clear. We don't believe that they were ever published as part of the Epstein files to begin with. And as for the categories that you're talking about, there is nothing in an FBI interview memo that could be considered privileged. There's nothing in an FBI interview memo that could be considered a duplicate. When the Department of Justice is talking about duplicates, they're usually talking about email chains. The obligation is to produce the most full version of that chain and not the first version of the message. It's just not, cognizable to me why it is that they withheld these.
Barrett, so much of this is out of the ordinary, to say the least. But how would other or prior DOJs handle a situation like this?
Yeah, I mean, when you look about producing case files, even in the routine run-of-the-mill case, what you would look to do and expect from any interview of a witness or somebody that was involved in the investigation, you would expect at the very minimum for there to be 2 documents. Handwritten notes taken by the agent who was conducting the interview, and then, as Lisa said, a memorialization of those. In a formal 302 report, if you're dealing with the FBI, each agency calls them something slightly different. At a bare minimum, every witness interview should have those 2 documents. So in, a drug case, any kind of a case that I was prosecuting, the first thing I would do as the prosecutor was to make sure that for every witness, each time they were interviewed, you would have those 2 documents. And just to be clear, every time a witness is interviewed, there's a new set of both of those documents. It doesn't matter if the witness is telling the truth. It doesn't matter if you go in there and within the first 30 seconds you think, I don't believe anything this person is saying. You still have to memorialize that and you still have to produce that. So the fact that we have the absence of these documents that, by the way, it seems were produced at least in connection with Maxwell's trial is really glaring and something that's pretty obviously glaring and would be to anyone who's prosecuted any kind of a case.
I want to play some of the comments we're hearing from Epstein survivors, who many of them were guests at the State of the Union last night. Take a listen.
We can choose accountability, and we can choose to build a country where no one, no matter how wealthy, connected, or politically insulated, stands above the law.
But there is an allegation. So this is one where if there is no cover-up, why are they behaving like there is?
Andrew, 90% of Americans have heard about the Epstein files. About 60% disapprove of Trump's handling of the Epstein files. The mystery has been, why is Trump taking on so much political water over an issue if he is, as he keeps saying, there's nothing to see here? Do you feel like this reporting that Lisa's done, that NPR has done, that independent journalists have done, offers an explanation?
I do, and I think there's going to be more. I think that it's not just going to be this allegation. I completely agree with Michael that this looks like a sloppy cover-up, just similar to sort of Watergate, where they got caught. And that's not to suggest that there, and I'm just speculating that there isn't more. And I think where there could easily be more is something that I have been very focused on, which is the lack of a really thorough investigation. Various reporters are really looking into this issue of where are all the videotapes, where is all the material that was at least reported and people thought Jeffrey Epstein was recording people. And there's reason to think that he wasn't, but there's also reason to think that he was. But where is all of that material? And there's a suggestion that that has not been found, nor that it's really been looked for carefully. We do know from Todd Blanche, for instance, that he has said that the material that came from the Epstein estate was something that the Department of Justice did not have. He said that when he said, the reason I didn't ask Ghislaine Maxwell about it is because we at the Department of Justice did not have it. So I think that there is a lot more evidence that is out there. And I think this is where good investigative journalists and Congress can do their job. And it is where these sort of flat out statements by Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, I think, are going to be paper thin, unfortunately, as many of their statements in the past have been. And so I think there is a lot more to come.
Let me show you how, actually, Clara, let me ask you to put your prosecutor hat on before I ask you to put your senator and political hat on. What do you see in this reporting?
I see that there were 4 interviews done around an explosive allegation in 2019 when Donald Trump was.
You know, this administration loves to claim that they're the most transparent administration in history. And that's obviously just a bunch of baloney. It's not true. Look, there is no reason as to why you would not publish these 53 pages that NPR discovered were missing in the Epstein files that relate to Trump. And if this was an allegation that he claims has no merit, then why not publish it? Why not let the public see it and make that judgment for themselves? But clearly there is a cover-up happening. I don't think that there's going to be a change in strategy because I think it's coming from the top. I think that Donald Trump is dictating what he wants to happen when it relates to the Epstein files. Look, he tried to bury these files for as long as he could, and it took an act of Congress to force their hand. And the DOJ is still not being transparent with the release of these files. And that's what's really sad about this situation, is that the once independent DOJ is no longer independent. We know that Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche are taking their marching orders from Donald Trump, and that there's a reason why these 53 pages were not released to the public, because there is seriously some sort of cover up happening. And I know that sounds like I have a tinfoil hat on and that I'm making a jump here, but why would they not release these files? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that everyday Americans are going to see that, and that this is going to distract from Trump's State of the Union. So it's just not a smart strategy in general for them politically either, even though morally it should be the right thing and ethically they should be releasing these files to the public, and legally they should, because they are required by law to release these files or give a reason as to why they're being withheld.
Yeah, and there was this Economist YouGov poll last week, Sarah, that showed a majority of Americans said they believe Trump is attempting to conceal crimes committed by Epstein. He's got a big speech tonight, big opportunity. But if voters think you've been lying to them, or at the very least not telling them the whole story, how do you fix that?
Yeah, the thing is, sometimes the cover up is worse than the crime. So I'm not going to go out here and say that these 53 pages that relate to an accuser of Donald Trump are true. We don't know because we don't have all the facts in front of us and we don't know what these interviews with the FBI entailed. But the fact that they're doing so much to try to cover it up, I just think that where there's smoke, there's fire, and the American people are smart enough to figure that out for themselves, too. I think that the Trump administration thought that they could push this off and that Trump thought he could discredit these files, calling them a Democratic hoax and all these things. But the thing is that the American people see right through this and that they want answers and transparency and accountability. But apparently this administration does not care about giving these survivors the justice that they deserve, as evidenced by Pam Bondi literally refusing to turn around and apologize to the Epstein survivors who were in the audience at her hearing in front of the House Judiciary Committee recently. They don't care about it. All Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche care about is protecting their boss, and Donald Trump does not care about the victims either. It's why he's never acknowledged them or showed any remorse for what they went through. And I think that this cover-up is going to continue to plague him.
People are speaking out, and what we've heard from the experts and the survivors is that the stuff that was hidden implicates Trump in true barbarity. Unspeakable, unmentionable stuff, right? And remember, we noticed this. We noticed that there was an issue. And the issues were both what we saw and what we didn't see. The issues were they were too late with the files. That right off the bat broke the law passed by Congress. They missed the deadline. And then when it did come out, when all of the stuff supposedly came out, there were redactions where there shouldn't have been redactions, and some things should have been redacted but weren't. So all of that, awful, right? But then we knew that not only were some of the information redacted that shouldn't have been, and that was likely to protect rich and powerful buddies of Donald Trump, but there were probably things just missing entirely, and that's where the real dirt was. And lo and behold, this new reporting that the stuff that's being hidden is the stuff that most directly implicates Trump in the reason people care about this story. Because before, the implications were more indirect. Oh, he was clearly friends with this guy. Oh, he probably knew what was happening and did nothing to stop it. That in and of itself is impeachable in my view. And this is why I think people like Bill Clinton and whatnot, and a lot of the people who were friends with him, still have not faced their moral, political, economic reckoning. But I don't know if that's a crime. But if you are accused of doing what Epstein did, then that's a whole different story. And at least allegedly, some of these missing documents make that claim. That's why Donald is absolutely terrified.